Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Spunkify here yet again for MMOBomb.com, and welcome back to the Free-to-Play Cast, episode 68. I do apologize for the slight delay in the show. We had a couple technical difficulties, but we're back finally, and we've got two new hosts for you today. One of them you may already have met if you keep track of our articles and announcements on the website itself, MMOBomb.com, and that is Jason. Jason, how are you doing today?
I am doing pretty darn well.
Jason is a connoisseur of the MMO market. He's been working in it for quite some time in terms of covering it in the article department for various websites and magazines, actual magazines. Look at you, street cred. And then, of course,
what are those? Those are those things that they used to make out of dead trees, right?
Those are the things that I used to go into like Barnes and Nobles and spend like 2 hours just reading the full magazine and never paying for it.
I remember that. Yeah, that's why we don't make them anymore.
That's why you don't make any. Everything's digital now. And then the second guy we have is Kevin. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great as well.
Kevin is a good friend, a real life friend of mine. I actually have a couple of those. And yeah, we're going to bring him on. He plays several MMORPGs. We're going to talk about those in just a little bit. But first of all, Kevin, Jason, wow, you guys actually have real names. And we never have that on the Free-to-Play Cast here. Spunkify, Jason, and Kevin. I don't know what's up with that.
I'm just not cool enough for a fake name.
I'm the odd man out here. I'm the one without not using my real name. Holy crap. But who? I don't know. I guess I could change my name to Spunkify and then everything would be peachy keen. But yeah, we ask everybody, all the new hosts, co-hosts I should say, what is the first MMO that sort of got you into MMORPGs? What sort of hook, line, and sinkered, I guess, or sunk? I don't even know how to properly grammaticize that. But starting off, oh, this episode is going amazing. Jason, what was the first MMO that you sort of played that got you into the whole series?
It's not like you need to use words well. It's not like you're my editor or anything. Oh, wait, anyway.
I am.
Yeah, well, actually, I guess you could say the first one was actually City of Heroes, which
Really?
I got into because of another magazine that I was working at before the MMO magazine, where someone gave me a free copy of it. So
Really?
that was my introduction to MMOs, was someone handing me a free box of City of Heroes. And
how much did you play of City Heroes?
I played it pretty solidly for about 7-8 months. It was just a little while after it came out, so it was like most of 04 and early part of 05. And then resubbed for a month or two every now and then. Didn't really get back into it much when it was free to play. I'd already moved on from there. After that, I'd gone on to Lord of the Rings Online, and that was the game that I played for, like 5 years.
I was half expecting you, like most of the other co-hosts, to say World of Warcraft. Like I was extremely expecting World of Warcraft.
Nope. I am not a WoW nerd.
You're
unlike just about everyone else.
I am impressed. I am impressed. You actually have street cred in the MMO market, and you have not played World of Warcraft in the past.
I'm an MMO hipster. Yep.
I know, right? Now, Kevin, what about you? What was the MMO that you sort of got you into MMORPGs or just gaming in general?
The main one, because I bounced around from like little one to little one, but the first one that really got me in was the Star Wars one. I spent way too much time for the first like 2 weeks it came out. I lived in my room on that game.
Which Star Wars one? Because there's been several Star Wars.
The Galaxies one.
Ah, okay. So if you were about to say Star Wars: The Old Republic, I think there would have been a couple of fanboys that would have cringed hard at that moment.
No, I actually never played that.
You're not you're not really missing anything, honestly. I don't know.
So I've been told.
Did I say that? Yeah, I guess I did.
Oh.
Galaxies I remember that coming out, and I remember reading on the box that you could just be like, someone who played music, like a musician, and that's what those things are, the people who play music. And it just seemed like a totally weird experience. Like it was an MMO that didn't have to be about combat, yet it was Star Wars. So
it really was more about the universe than just running around questing and beating other people up, which was kind of fun.
I really wanted to be a stormtrooper in an ATST. That was sort of like my dream. But at the time, I was not allowed to play that MMORPG. That's how, I guess I'm showing a little bit of my age, but the game is a little bit old too. And at the time, my parents were like, no, you don't need to sink all this money and that time into the MMO. So, of course, I started with more traditional things like WoW. So I was a WoW nerd for a while.
I guess I do have to admit to that I was a WoW nerd as well. So
90% of MMORPG people seem like they were a WoW nerd at some point in time. But we're on to free-to-play games now. WoW isn't free-to-play, so why don't we go ahead and just drop right into the news. So this week, starting out, we have a little bit of Planetside 2 update news. Now, Planetside 2, of course, steadily been getting updates for month after month after its official release, and at first there was a lot of hesitance. There was people that said, yeah, it's fun because there's a lot of people, but there's no real objectives overall, and everything sort of just is a big zerg that moves from one location to the next. But we've seen steady improvements since then, and this latest update has added the first new vehicle, the Harasser, which is a 3-man buggy, and can fit a max in the back, basically to take pot shots out. And there's been some weapon balance tweaks, a lot of UI improvements, 3 faction-specific max anti-vehicle guns, which I think is a great actual addition because, let's face it, I think the max anti-vehicle weapons are sort of like the least appealing part of a max suit if you do play Planetside. And then, of course, new cosmetic helms and whatnot. So, Jason, I know you play Planetside a little bit. What have been your thoughts since release with all the updates that the game's sort of accrued over time?
I like to see how they're refining a lot of things. I mean, it's like you see a lot of MMOs. You know, they come out and they're pretty good. They got the basics down, but they just lack little bits and pieces of things. Like you talk about, like they have kind of like an achievement system now in Planetside 2, where almost like dailies, where you kill a certain number of people or you defend a base, you get a little extra XP or something. They do the things where you have to capture a continent in a certain time limit, adding like almost like the equivalent of a raid, like a big end game kind of everybody
Alerts.
get together and try to do that thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's cool they are doing that sort of thing, bringing it along because I wasn't sure really what they were going to do with it after, because it's not like your typical MMO where you form a party, go kill the dragon or anything. So it's like, wow, what are you gonna work on with that? And they've had their game plan, their what do they call it, roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
They've had that published for a while, and they're doing a pretty good job of keeping up with that and making sure that they do progress the game along and improve on it, every month or so.
A lot of the stuff that they've been sort of hinting at that they're working towards in the future, sort of like the actual, not really quest, but sort of a little bit more refined and focused than just an alert, which is basically, alert is, for those of you that don't play Planetside, it's when they tell you to go and attempt to capture a particular continent out of the 3 continents available. And so everybody tries to pile into that server, and it really does sort of alleviate the issue that the game was having early on, that people weren't going to other than Indar, which was the main continent, people weren't going to Amarish or Indar. And so the alert system actually forces people to go to those other continents, because otherwise you miss out on a ton of experience, which of course translates over to credits. Certifications. Now, speaking of certifications, Jason, I don't know if you've actually logged into the game today, but they seem to have refunded a lot of different things. I think if you made any kind of purchase that was something that was supposed to be cross-faction, like anti-air guns for maxes and other things, but I logged in and I had 3,000 certification points to spend.
Wow.
3,000.
I did log in today on 2 of my characters. I'll have to check the 3rd one, though, because I haven't... that sounds great, because I actually bought a gun with 1,000 certs that they then changed, and now I don't want it anymore. So I'm going to have to check that other character now.
I really don't know what happened. I don't know if it was a glitch for me, but I heard other people saying that they got different things sort of like refunded, and it was something to do with the station cash. They couldn't refund station cash specifically, but they refunded them as certification. So yeah, I got that. I also had a boost to my experience, but that just may be some kind of thing that they're having right now. Normally I have like a 50% boost because I do have that little alpha certification chip inserted into my character, but it was up to at times 115% today. So
it changes depending on sometimes depending on your situation, like if you're in a squad or where you are, or if you're defending a base, that can go up. So
yeah, I was aware of that, but it was like 100% when I first logged in, so I don't even know what was going on. It was pretty crazy. Now, Kevin, I know you don't really have, and this kind of brings me to like a little bit of a nitpicking point that I still have with Planetside. Kevin, I know you don't actually have a computer that can run Planetside 2. The game is quite a resource hog, so you're kind of left out in this discussion a little bit.
Yeah, and it really kind of stinks, because it's not that I wouldn't play the game if I could. It's just frustrating to have to put so much of an outside resource just to play a game.
Yeah, that has been a huge complaint for people. People say that, yeah, the game's great, but you can't play it. And I have a really good computer. I have like an i5 that's overclocked and like 16 gigs of RAM, and like a GTX 670. And playing yesterday, I was going down to 15, 20 frames at times. Like, it seems optimization is just all around, all across the board, up and down. Sometimes you get patches where it's great. Sometimes you get patches where it's terrible. And that seems to be really something that they've had a hard time locking down for players that are of lower system specs. Jason, do you have a decent computer? How does it run for you?
I have a pretty good computer, not quite as great as yours, it sounds like, or so on. But I usually, when I'm sitting around just looking around, I can get like, 45, 50 frames per second. Get into a battle, usually drops maybe around 25, 30, maybe a little more if there's a whole lot going on. So I've never really had like a playability issue, but there have been times when I wish I could get a little more. But if I'm trying to stream or if I'm trying to record or something, it can really take a pretty big hit.
Yeah, one thing I actually read is that some people tend to get better frames per second by putting the game up to higher resolution settings and then higher graphic settings, because it offloads the game is CPU bottlenecked essentially, and it offloads a lot of the computation that at lower graphic settings are placed on the CPU versus the graphics card, and it puts them onto the graphics card. So you may actually find that you get better frames at higher graphic settings if you have like a moderate GPU. So that's something to try for those of you who have been having issues with the game. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our next article here. Now, Neverwinter, it's been out for, of course, Cryptic Studios' new MMO based on the Dungeons & Dragons, published by Perfect World Entertainment. It's been out now for a little bit over a week and a couple days, I'd say. So I think it's in open beta, but I think it's sort of enough time for people to start finding issues with the game, seeing how it actually will start panning out over the, at least for the next few months, I'd have to say. Me and Kevin, I know both of us have been playing it quite a lot. Jason, have you been playing it either?
Yeah, I've gotten quite a bit. I got a character up to like level 20. I've been playing some Foundry stuff. Started working on my own Foundry mission, but that's coming along pretty slowly. But yeah, I'm playing it. It's all right. It's decent, not maybe spectacular, but I'm liking it pretty well so far.
Kevin, what do you think about it? I know you've actually been enjoying it quite a lot,
yeah.
You're a big Dungeons & Dragons fan.
Yeah, now the nerd comes out. No, visually, I've been really impressed with it, considering it's a client-based, so you're not expecting it to maybe have the visuals of a full-blown, release, but it's been beautiful. There were some issues with a few things. I mean, the character I chose just tends to do more damage than everything on Earth, but, yeah, I can't
What character are you playing?
I'm playing the Trickster Rogue right now.
The Trickster Rogue does seem to kill everything like in half the time that any of the other classes I played kill things.
Yeah, I know from playing some of these early quests, I will kill something before people get close enough to even attempt to auto-attack it, which, I mean, is cool for me, but can be frustrating when you're trying to do a group quest and you feel like I'm not really contributing.
Now, what do you think in terms of like the actual MMO portion of the game? And doing the quest, what do you think of the quest? What do you think of in sort of the longevity in terms of, will this be something players will enjoy leveling up and then playing in-game?
Well, there seems to be a large variety of the quests. It's not every quest like, go kill this dude, do this. There's different things. Sometimes it's gathering. Sometimes it's just finding new areas of it. They kind of wrap the tutorial of every single part of the game into actual quests instead of just you feel like you're doing a tutorial. But probably the biggest pro is those Foundry quests and some of the PvP, because the Foundry quest means endless variety. I've done some of them that I'm like, wow, this is just so much different than anything else I'd done. It was just really cool to be able to see everything that's available inside the Foundry.
I'd argue that the Foundry quests are better than the main storyline quests.
Oh, undoubtedly.
Yes.
They are way better. I was actually fairly let down by a lot of the main storyline quests. A lot of them just typically end up being the same thing. Go in here, kill something. Sure, you get different monsters and you get different things to fight. And that's one of the things that I think Neverwinter has done right, is the pacing of the game doesn't feel too slow. And you're always, once you get tired of a certain zone, it's about time to go to a next zone. And so you always have like a refreshing amount of different enemies to fight overall. As you level up. But the Foundry opens up so many new opportunities for different sort of quest lines and different environments. And also, if you're a new player, if you're a lower level player, it also lets you fight monsters that you may not see for 30, 40 levels. So I think it really allows or opens up the opportunity for players at max level to continuously do content, and sort of alleviates that problem with what do you do after you've done everything. And then it also gives the low-level players something to look forward to if they're bored of just fighting orcs at low level or what have you. And then it gives the players who like contributing content to a game the opportunity to do that. I think it's really a win. I think that portion, the Foundry portion of Neverwinter, is one of its strongest assets. But there are some things that I think are completely broken about Neverwinter. And I know me and you, Kevin, have been talking about this a little bit. I'm curious to know, Jason, if you've really experienced too much issue with this, but that's the whole Astral Diamond, the whole currency sort of economy of the game is you have so many different types of resources that you can gather that, you know, equate to you being able to buy things in the auction house versus your gear and all kinds of stuff. And a lot of it seems convoluted and repetitive. Have you had really a lot of issues with dealing with the whole Astro Diamond sort of pay-to-win aspect of the game?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out, figure out exactly what kind of impact it has. I mean, when you get the Hero of the North package like I do, you get like 2 million Astro Diamonds.
Yeah,
just
I got
crazy.
that too.
Yeah, I know. And, you know, that it almost trivializes the rest of the stuff. I mean, you can do the daily foundry quest to get 1,000. It's like, well, whoop-de-doo. I got 2 freaking million, so.
I was just going to say that I think it actually messed up the economy a little bit because a lot of people have a lot of Astro Diamonds because of purchasing those pre-order packs, and so everything's inflated on the market currently.
Yeah, so I'm not even going to bother trying to play the market or anything like that until it settles down in a few months and the prices come back down to reality.
Yeah, and what were you going to say, Kevin?
Well, yeah, because there's some things that you can only get with Zen, like if you find any of those nightmare chests, which are all over the place and have some of those really awesome, unique items, the only way you're purchasing them is with Zen. And right now it's like one Zen somewhere in the market of 400 to 420 Astro Diamonds just for one Zen. I mean, that seems a little steep.
What, how much? Like 100 or something for a key, probably?
Yeah, it's 125 for a key. So you're looking at like 52,000 Astro Diamonds, some crazy amount just to pull off one key.
Yeah, save up your chest and wait for the price to go down.
Yeah, there's no purpose buying anything on the market. I made the mistake of buying a couple keys like when it first came out, and those were going for like 40,000 Astro Diamonds per key, and that's before I really read into the whole economy, and I was like, oh, that was just wasted. Like, I just felt that was like completely wasted because I didn't get the Nightmare mount or whatever either. Speaking of which, I'm really starting to get tired of that announcement. Every time a Nightmare mount is found, it sends out a global announcement, and
once every 30 seconds in some of the quests,
something like that. Yeah, it's so terrible. It's very annoying. So yeah, I know some people have been complaining about some of the classes being overpowered or underpowered. Great Weapon Fighter is one of the classes that is pretty much across the board deemed underpowered, at least at lower levels. And then it's funny that you said, Kevin, that you found the graphics to be appealing. I don't think they're that bad, but there's a lot of people who actually find them to be subpar, I guess you could say. And some of the animations have been criticized as well as being a little stiff. And I think it's fine. I don't really have too much of an issue. In terms of graphics, you never expect the best out of an MMORPG because they have to make those sort of decisions in terms of playability versus the performance, etc. But I can definitely see where some people are coming from. Particularly, I think the new rat race looks hideous. The ones with the big teeth and whatnot, they kind of look like humanoid rats. I think those models are pretty terrible, and some of the animation's a little bit wonky. But overall, I think those are minor grievances. And I think that Neverwinter surely has something to offer for everyone who's interested in like a new action style of gameplay. It's not going to be for everyone, but only time will tell whether or not the whole Astral Diamond thing really pans out and equates to something that... Because right now, it's borderline, if not already slightly pay to win. In terms of... Because the economy's so messed up, people who do pay for Zen and convert that to Astral Diamonds or what have you are going to have a fairly significant advantage, especially when you get up to the whole issue with enchantments and buying basically a stone that guarantees that you get an enchantment for a particular piece of item. Because I think if you just tried it without that stone up to the maximum rank, it's like 1% in order to succeed with the max rank enchantment on certain types of items. So there's a really big sort of discrepancy with people in terms of whether or not they think this game is outright pay to win, and those that think that it could be borderline. But I would highly suggest everyone who's interested in reading about like the issues that Neverwinter's been having with the cash shop, and then also server stability issues, because the servers have been down multiple times. To check out the Reddit Neverwinter subreddit. It's reddit.com/r/Neverwinter, because it really breaks down really well all the issues with the cash shop, along with some of the complaints about the gameplay, and then class mounts, etc. I think that is a really big source of wealth of knowledge for those of you who are interested in checking out Neverwinter. But overall, Kevin, Jason, what would you give Neverwinter a thumbs up or thumbs down after playing it for a little bit over a week?
I would give it a thumbs up, mostly for the Foundry content and that sort of thing. For some of the other issues that we were talking about, it's not quite as well, I think. But I think what they're doing with the Foundry and what the potential they have for that, I think gives it an overall thumbs up.
All right. And what about you, Kevin?
I'm going to give it a thumbs up as well, although I'd like to see them fix the economy or find some way to counteract just the unbalanced side of it, as well as actually get the classes a little more balanced too. I mean, you should be able to play the type that you want without it just being off the bat worse than everybody else.
Yeah, some people argue that, oh, you should just wait for like the Great Weapon Fighter until level 30 because that's when it gets better. But a lot of people make or break their decision, or sorry, a lot of people choose whether or not they're going to play an MMO within the first 15, 20 levels, on a particular class. And if you're having a terrible experience in those first few levels, then they're not going to stick around.
Exactly.
So there's certainly some balance issues to play up. All right, so our next article here deals with the DC Universe-inspired MOBA, DC Universe-inspired MOBA, Infinite Crisis. Not to be confused with another upcoming expansion for DC Universe Online. Infinite Crisis reportedly started its closed beta on this Wednesday, the May 8th. And I believe you were mentioning, Jason, before we recorded that there's like a more open version of the closed beta, which starts next Tuesday.
No, that was the actually DC Universe Online expansion. This is where we're still getting confused. Yeah.
Yeah. So two separate things. So yeah, it did start on Wednesday, May 8th. And really, I've seen some gameplay footage of it. I'm actually a little bit excited for it. I don't really get excited for MOBAs very often because a lot of them turn out like crap, and the only ones I really play, well, actually the only one I really play regularly right now is Dota 2. But of course there's League of Legends, and I think it really comes down to just like the sensitivity of the mouse and how it all feels, and make sure it doesn't feel clunky and whatnot, because you need those fast reaction times. Now, Kevin, I know you're a huge fan of DC Universe, everything DC Universe. So I have a pretty strong sense that you're going to be, chomping at the bit to play this game.
That would be an understatement. I grew up a huge fan of Batman, and then it grew into everything else. So yeah, it really interests me the fact that they're doing a game that really explores the multiverse. It's always, you see the general Batman, Superman, Justice League everywhere. But it's cool to see them actually explore these other 52 worlds or other 51 worlds other than just Earth Prime. So how it plays as a game, well, we'll find out. But as far as the concept, I think it's something that the comic book fans especially will fall in love with.
What about you, Jason? Are you much of a MOBA fan?
I am neither a big MOBA fan nor a big comic book fan. So
Disappointment.
In general, I know. I don't do that. I don't play WoW. I'm a failure as a geek, basically.
And you work for an MMO magazine. No,
I know. Well, we only sort of covered MOBAs back then. But anyway, I mean, I'm sure it'll do all right. Although it's like the what is it? It's a Guardians of Middle-earth MMO or MOBA thing that someone else is doing with the
Lord of the Rings
stuff.
PS3, right?
And it's like I thought I'd heard not great things about that, and it makes you wonder how easily you can adapt a licensed property to a MOBA. To just take it and, it's something to have, for League of Legends to have, whatever, Lux in a lane and Teemo in a lane, but it's something weirder to see the Joker in a lane and Batman in a lane. It's just like...
Well, in the case of Infinite Crisis, it could be multiple Jokers, because it's multiple versions of Joker. Yeah.
And that's even weirder. I think I don't remember if Middle-earth does that too, but again, it'd be weird to have like two Gandalfs or whatever running around. So yeah, it does seem a little more, I guess, immersion breaking, so to speak. So I wonder if they can overcome that and still get people in.
Yeah, they get around it a little bit by saying, yeah, these are different universes, so they're different versions. But it's still like, how do you like short-term slang that? Like, how do you like, oh, Joker, go here? Like, which Joker? Like, fat Joker, skinny Joker? Like, how do you like? I don't know how you do abbreviate that. The one thing I wanted to sort of talk about is the term MOBA, or the genre, the name itself. MOBA, of course, stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena. And while that does fit what the games like League of Legends and Dota and we hope Infinite Crisis actually is, it does leave it open for misinterpretation and just interpretation in general. Because we have a lot of games. We had recently Panzer that came out that called itself a MOBA or something like a MOBA, an action battle arena MMO. And we've had many games come out to sort of slap that sort of genre name on itself to not only get notoriety and get attention, but because they also felt like it's deemed, or it was what they were. And a lot of people sort of took offense to that because they're like, no, a MOBA is tri-lane, creeps going down the lane, creeps in the jungle, being able to last hit, kill towers, kill base. That's the game. And I would argue that it's not really so much the developer's fault, but it's actually a fault with the term itself. I don't think MOBA describes accurately what a MOBA game actually is versus, say, a FPS, first-person shooter, or a TPS, third-person shooter, or an MMORPG. What do you guys think about that?
I feel that the MOBA term is really kind of split down the side. You get one side of the gaming generation that's like, well, it is that tri-lane. They're very strict on the definition. And I see a lot of others where like, well, it all kind of fits under the same thing. And that whole polarization causes a lot of issues. Because me personally, if I were to take a game like Smite, under the strict definition, yeah, it's a MOBA, but for me, it always felt like a third-person shooter that just happened to have lanes and mobs. I mean, I was more of I don't really feel like I'm overhead view, don't get to see the whole arena. I'm just involved in my little area. But at the same time, I understand that desire to kind of just group everything in and be like, well, these are all in a battle arena. There you go. So I'm both sides of the story, I guess.
And Jason, for you not being a MOBA player, how do you view it from the sidelines?
I think MOBA can definitely apply to more things than just lanes and creeps and so on. I mean, it's, I used to have to explain what I did to people, and I was like, yeah, I write for MMORPGs, and they might have heard that. They might have heard of World of Warcraft. So their notion of an MMORPG is a thing where you form up and you go fight dragons with swords and wizards and whatever. And I'm like, well, yeah, but then there's EVE Online, and there's Star Wars Galaxies, and there's City of Heroes, and there's all these other games that aren't about fantasy and so on. Let's take a game like Planetside 2 that doesn't even have the traditional grouping and raids and so on. That's an MMO, but that's why I think that MOBA doesn't necessarily have to apply to that exact kind of lanes and creeps and so on. And how does, in that case, how does something like the Dominion map in League of Legends fit in? Is that part of a MOBA? Is that the same game, or is it something different, or what would you classify that as?
I think people who think of MOBA in the traditional sense think of a MOBA as something where there are objectives on the map. You have two teams, most likely teams of 5 or something similar to that. You have a set of skills. Those skills may or may not be leveled up. Some type of progressive system either in the game or outside of the game before the match. And generally speaking, iconic heroes essentially, or iconic, playable characters. I think that's really what a lot of people have sort of defined what MOBA is. And then some people add to that, they look at it as like the typical tri-lane, or, having creeps and whatnot. But I don't think having a specific sort of layout of the map or having creeps in general is something that you need to have a MOBA. But I do agree with you. You made a good point about different MMORPGs having different sort of styles of play, but still being MMORPGs. And that's something that even today, some people argue about whether a game is an MMO or not. Just from the classification of MMO being massively multiplayer online. What is massive? Is massive 1,000? Is massive 20 people, 30, 40, 50? You do have some of those arguments coming in. But I would agree, games like Panzer, other games that will come out undoubtedly with the MOBA sort of genre slapped to it, could be defined as that. And I think people just really need to realize that genres evolve, genres change, new elements are implemented, not all first-person shooters are the same, yet they're still a first-person shooter, they're still from that perspective. But one thing that people should realize is that a MOBA doesn't have to be just top-down. You don't just have to see the map from like an isometric view. It can be behind a person. I could argue that it could even be first-person and still be considered a MOBA. And there's things like that to consider. But overall, I'm excited for Infinite Crisis. It doesn't look like your typical MOBA. I didn't see very much of any creeps in the videos that they've shown for the heroes, or champions, or whatever they want to call them, heroes, supervillains. I'm patiently waiting. Although there has been reports that the beta has been delayed a couple days internally in terms of the servers haven't been actually up. But who knows? I'm not in the beta right now, so I can't comment on that. Now, going along the same lines of things that are superhero or supervillain related, Marvel Heroes had an open beta weekend last week. I got a chance to play that. Now, Jason, have you actually participated, or have you been in the closed beta at all for Marvel Heroes yet?
I wasn't in the beta, but I did get a chance to try it out when I was at PAX Prime last year.
What did you think of it?
That's my experience. Basically, I thought of it was Diablo with superheroes.
It's pretty much what it is.
That's just about exactly what it is. I mean, you've got the same kind of viewpoint. You've got a few powers that you can level up as you go along, and when you kill stuff, they drop loot and so on. And that's pretty much how it felt. I mean, I played Wolverine and ripped through stuff for a while, and then eventually got to a boss fight with Magneto, and I just had to go around and avoid his attacks, get mine in. Just felt very generally Diablo-like.
Are you a fan of action RPGs?
I haven't played a whole lot of Diablo. I'm not like a super mega Diablo fan. I wasn't one of the guys who was like lining up to buy Diablo 3 last year and was massively disappointed by it or anything. It's okay. It's not something just not that big into it. So it's something, and like I said, I'm not much of a comics geek, so it's something that I'll probably look into a little bit because it's going to be free to play and give it a shot. But I don't know.
You can say you're going to skip it. I will. No hard feelings here. I mean, like Kevin might be mad at you. Kevin's a huge.
I try to try everything. I try.
Well, as much as I'd like to say I'd be mad, I'm actually in the same boat because, yeah, from everything I've watched from it, video and talking to people who have actually gotten a chance to play it, it's nothing that there's. Yeah, it's just Diablo with superheroes. I mean, even the exact loot with it, dropping stuff for other characters and whatnot. Diablo I liked playing, but even then I got tired of it after a couple hours of straight playing. You're like, well, that's the same thing with different looking, monsters. Woo! So the fact that you're going to play the Marvel Heroes, it'd be better if they were unique to each person. Like you didn't see like 30 Thors or 12 Hulks or whatever on the map. But the fact that you're like, oh, he's a Hulk too. Oh, he's a Hulk too. Oh, this is not as fun.
You bring up a good point about there being like a bunch of established superheroes on the screen at once. And, you have other MMORPGs like City of Heroes or Champions Online where you created your own superhero. Even DC Universe Online, although it had iconic superheroes and supervillains in it, you played as your own superhero. In this game, you play as pre-established ones, and like any other action RPG, that means no customization in the sense of cosmetically. Now, you can change the skin of your hero so it looks like a different version of it, but I mean, come on, you're still Captain America, you're still Thor, and there's still a bunch of other Thors around there. And I think it becomes less of a problem in other action RPGs because you're not someone who's iconic. You're just a character. You're just a character, you're a monk, you're whatever have you that isn't, just happens to look similar somewhat to other characters. And plus, it actually is alleviated somewhat by the fact that you can see the items that you equip on your character. You can't see them in Marvel Heroes. So you still look like whatever you started as, and so does everybody else, unless they bought a skin or they found a skin, because you can find them in the game as you progress. Now, that aside, there are portions of the graphics that are quite nice, the particle effects notably, but then there are portions of it that aren't quite so nice. Notably right now, the optimization issues it's having. Granted, it's still in beta. But some of the characters, when you get in close, there is a notable lack of detail on some of them. And some of the powers feel like they're a little bit repetitive in the sense that they accomplish the same thing but look slightly different. And so once you basically find the optimal path, it seems, in terms of what combination of powers work the best, I see no reason to really deviate from that. I do like the fact that you can swap in and out of different heroes at any time. So if you have other ones unlocked and you don't feel like playing, say, Hulk or something for a while, you can swap to Iron Man or Deadpool or whatnot. And they have done a good job of sort of adding in a layer of immersion from the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue, a lot of the action comics that are in the action RPG are done really well, and the voice acting is done at times really well. Some of the original cartoon voice actors have returned for some of the characters, so there is a nice level of authenticity. Authenticity, yeah. In the game, but it goes back to the whole: do you want to play as an established superhero, or do you want to create your own? And in this case, I feel like it takes away from the experience by having so many of the same superhero on the screen at once.
I gotta think though that they figure that, if they're trying to market it to a slightly larger audience, a more mass audience, that they figure they're gonna have more luck marketing as play as Wolverine, play as Hulk, as opposed to play as some guy you made up. So that's probably part of the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, most but even DC Universe Online, people played that and they knew they were going to be
Sure.
super, but there's nothing wrong, I think, with giving players the ability to have the powers of certain iconic superheroes, but still be your own character. Like, I think they could have written that into that, where, you are not Iron Man, but you have access to his technology somehow, or somehow, the Justice League or whatever has called upon you to take up, a play, or to help them essentially, and you develop your playstyle based around sort of a mentor, like DC Universe Online has in some respect, and you can get those powers. But I can definitely see, they just chose to go with you are Iron Man or whatever.
Well,
And
Tony Stark is drunk, and you have to go get in the suit and take his place.
yeah, something like that. Like, they could have done something like that, and it would have made me feel better in that respect to play something that looked similar to a superhero that I was really familiar with, but it wasn't that superhero.
For me, the issue isn't playing as the superhero. It's not being the only one of it. I mean, when you grow up and you're kind of like, oh, these superheroes awesome, you don't envision yourself being one of 37 other Supermans. You're like, I'm Superman. So you want to play a game where you're Superman. You don't want to see 30 other guys on the screen going, hey, look, I'm doing it too. You're like, it's just me. So
the hard part about that is if you're trying to form a group too. It's like, well, I'm Iron Man, and nobody else can. Wait, if both of you and I want to play a group, and we both want to play Iron Man, who gets to do it?
You both play Iron Man, yeah.
Well, but he says he doesn't want that, so yeah. I don't know.
I guess if you're really trying to RP it up, you would be like, no, I can only play it with Iron Man, Black Widow, Hulk. There can't be multiple of them.
Sure. If you're that crazy.
Now, this should be up in time, but for those of you interested, there is a final open beta weekend happening this weekend, starting not tomorrow, but the 11th, and going till either Sunday or Monday. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and download the game, check it out for yourself. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the game. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and give this game a thumbs down. Just for all the time that they spent on it, I think it just misses the mark overall. I don't think that... I mean, we've already had really good action RPGs. Path of Exile, I mean, if you want to include pay to play or buy to play action RPGs, Torchlight 2 was great too. But Path of Exile, certainly in my opinion, is the best free-to-play option right now for action RPGs. Moving on, we have a new update for Lord of the Rings Online. Now, this is right up your alley, Jason, because you're a big Lord of the Rings Online player, and I know Kevin's just a fan of the series overall, and I'm a fan of the movies somewhat. I like the action sequences in the movies. I couldn't really get myself to actually read the books, nor could I actually play a lot of the MMO, but I appreciate it for what it is. And the new update is actually, or the new patch / expansion, is going to be centered around Helm's Deep, which honestly has me super excited. Not from the perspective that I'm going to play it, but just to see what they're going to do in the MMO. Jason, are you going to return to the MMO to try out Helm's Deep, or are you done with it?
I haven't even leveled my character to max since the last expansion. That's how much I've been out of Lord of the Rings Online. Used to be a time where I see an update about a new or a new thing coming out, and I'd just be all over it and be reading it and talking about it on the forums. I'm just not at that place anymore. It's nice to see that they are still keeping up stuff, and it looks like they're doing some really have some pretty interesting scenery. I mean, I saw the video about this, how they've got I don't remember what it was, some sort of frost giant or something that's making this area all frosty and cold and whatever. Definitely looking like it's bringing on something a little more different than just, oh look, more orcs, more Uruk-hai. They're trying to provide. So there could be plenty of Uruk-hai, of course, but they're trying to at least provide some kind of different gameplay, because that's always been an issue with them. They can't deviate that far from the the canon of Lord of the Rings. They have to stick with orcs and that sort of thing. So
you can only kill orcs so many times before you're bored of killing
orcs. Exactly. And it looks like they're adding a decent chunk of new territory, after adding so much in the Rohan expansion. So
now,
I mean, go ahead.
I'm curious because for me, the most iconic scene out of Lord of the Rings ever is the Two Towers. The fight at Helm's Deep. That blew me away when I was young and I was watching it. Just the fidelity and how many were there on the screen. And I always, growing up when I was playing MMORPGs, always wanted, that experience, that having, thousands and thousands of players or orcs or just NPCs or whatever fighting or rushing a fortress of some type. And it has me really excited to see what they would do for that. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, it's probably going to be somewhat of a janky MMORPG version of Helm's Deep. Not going to really live up to my expectations. What do you see them sort of doing? And Kevin, you can add in this, even though you don't play, but you just can see from a perspective of an MMORPG. What do you think they should do in order to sort of capture that sort of feeling of that battle? I mean, is it going to be a raid? Is it going to be just like an instance dungeon kind of thing where there's multiple parts? Is it going to be PvP based? I mean, there's a lot of options here. What would you like to see them do if you were going to play it? I guess you could say.
The funny thing is, we talked about this. I talked about it years ago. I mean, this is something that I talked about when I was really active. Like, how are they going to do Helm's Deep? And what I thought they might do most likely is to make it a skirmish. When they first introduced the skirmish mechanic, they made it so that what they did is they had a few parts of the epic quest that had you go through skirmishes. I could see that same kind of thing for Helm's Deep, that they make it so make it part of the epic quest line, because it is epic. It's part of like the main quest line, so to speak. So I would think that you'd want to make it accessible to everybody, but it also should have the possibility to be huge and big and spectacular, like you say. And probably the best way for them to do that is with their skirmish mechanics.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd have to kind of agree, because as far as the whole storyline goes, if you follow the books or anything, this is the first epic battle. I mean, the first large-scale, like, knock your socks off, there's way too many guys, I'm going to die kind of battle. And if you don't really approach that, I mean, from the game side, you're probably just going to let down a lot of people. You're going to be like, wow, Helm's Deep. You're going to look out on a sea of orcs. You walk up, there's 4 guys standing near, like, that's the sea? So I would have to agree. I mean, if you do it as a dungeon, there's going to be a limit to how many orcs or whatever you're going to have to deal with at a certain time. You get to a skirmish where you can go a little more bigger, a little kind of see the whole field of them. Give it a more visceral feel. You just got to walk that fine line where it's actually possible, yet at the same time gives it the feeling of an epically large battle.
Yeah, because you mentioned possible. This is an older MMORPG engine. I mean, we're not talking about Planetside 2 here. We're talking about something that may not even be able to handle hundreds of things on the screen at one time. So obviously, there's going to be some smoke and mirrors in some respects about it. Whether that be like wave-based Helm's Deep, crashes where it's like you get a lot of orcs, but you get like 50 at a time. You don't get thousands at a time or something.
That being said, I mean that could work as long as it looks like in the background behind them there's a bunch more coming. Then I feel like it could get the same feel to it.
Yes.
What would be great is if they could find a way to make it. Right now, skirmishes only scale up to 12 people. If they could find a way to make it 24, which is like the maximum raid size, make it a 24-person skirmish, and have stuff happening in like a bunch of different places. You got to deploy 8 guys here and 8 guys there and 8 guys over there, and you just got to run around all of Helm's Deep and do stuff.
What if it was an open world event? What if it open world event in the sense that it happened every so often, like you had to do like a quest chain that led up to it that actually began the event. But once the event began, you could have you could then have hundreds of players there. And they could all be spread out across the whatever. I mean, I don't know. You can't access Helm's Deep right now, can you?
No, because they haven't had issues doing that with Guild Wars 2.
True. And that's a much newer MMO.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't think a big open world, hundreds of person thing would be feasible.
Maybe when I'm 50, maybe that's when we'll get to that point where we can do things like that. But overall, I'm glad to see that they keep adding new updates to SWTOR. There is a dedicated fan base, I know that for a fact. It is still buy to play for the expansions, so you can play the base game for free, but need to buy the expansions. I'm a little bit bummed about that. Now, Jason, is there any way for players that are free to play to accrue a currency or anything to purchase the expansions for free, or do you still have to buy them?
Well, you do get to, I said, you can acquire turbine points as you play. That's something that you get, or you can actually, get them as part of your subscription. But yeah, you can acquire turbine points. It's hard to get a lot of turbine points just by completely being free player. When expansions come out, they've generally made it cost money, real money, and maybe a little bit down the line they make it so you can buy with turbine points, which is especially big if you do have a sub and you get like a free, or you get a certain number of turbine points a month. So then you don't necessarily have to pay money for the expansions. It would be theoretically possible, but you'd have to farm a lot of stuff to to not pay anything ever for an expansion.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but $15, $20 doesn't sound too bad versus like the time I would have to spend in that game.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not 15 anymore with a free summer that I can do whatever I want with, you know. All right, so good update. Looking forward to seeing what they do about that. Now, there's a little bit of additional news I wanted to touch on, and that actually just was reported today in that the, speaking of Star Wars, going back to Star Wars for a second, Star Wars The Old Republic had double the revenue after converting to free-to-play. So it was just released. EA had a meeting with its investors where it reported that the game had added more than 1.7 million new players since the conversion. Keep in mind that it peaked at 1.7 million when it was pay-to-play in February 2012 before falling below 1 million subs in July, which is what prompted EA to make the conversion in the first place. And that the actual subscriber amount, those that do still pay the subscriber fee, had stabilized right around 500,000. So, but the key sort of like note in this is that he mentioned the revenue, he being the president of labels at EA, Frank Gibeu, mentioned that the revenue had more than doubled since going free to play. And that actually sort of made me chuckle because I was like, well, of course it's doubled. You restrict everything about the game, so people have to play, or have to pay rather, in order to access like really critical, in my eyes, critical features of the game, of any MMORPG. Did you ever play Old Republic, Jason?
Yeah, I did back when I had a sub. I played it for a few months and didn't get into it when it was free to play because I'd have to buy my hot bars back. So yeah,
that's what really like stupefied me as a person who bought the game, who paid a sub for several months. I still didn't get access to like all my hot bars, or couldn't do all the dungeons. I couldn't raid. I couldn't put on epic gear anymore. I was like completely neutered, and I'm like, I spent $60 on this game plus however many months of subs, and you're going to stiff me almost as much as a completely free to play player. Like,
well, if I recall correctly how it was, it's like you did get some points for being a subscriber and whatever beforehand, but to access those points, you had to buy at least 1 month worth of subscription after when free to play. You couldn't just go in with that and play, which that's the part that really irked me.
I logged back in the game when it was free to play. I did like 5 quests, and I said F that, and then I uninstalled it again. I reinstalled it to check it out as free to play, and then in one night I uninstalled it again. Like, I could not bear it. I was only like 3 levels away from max level 2. Like 3 levels away on my infiltrator. I was like, I remember being not able to play my infiltrator correctly because I was limited to just 2 bars. And I was like, I need more than 2 bars to access all my skills. There's no way. I had to open like my skill book and like manually click some of my skills that I needed because I didn't have room on my action bar for all my skills.
And remember, it was going to be only 1 bar, but then they changed it to 2.
Oh man, 2 bars.
That's
so
generous.
You have to pay to send mail. I mean, what is this, a trial? Like, yeah. Send mail, talk in general chat, access a secondary crew skill, which is like your crafting skills, access raids, all these things. I mean, there's lists and lists, feature after feature, neutered by making it free to play like this. And so when I hear about, revenue is doubled, well, of course it's doubled, but it doesn't mean people are happy about it. Like, those are people who are just spending $1 here, $1
What is happy? They're making more money. That's all they care about.
I'm talking about happy from the perspective of the players. Like,
I know, that's what I'm saying. They don't care if they have happy players, just players who are giving them money.
Yeah, that's EA. It's true. It's just EA, the company that was voted twice the worst company in the world, 2 years running. So
that's something to shoot for.
Yeah, go for 3 years.
Yeah.
Repeat.
You get an award for that, right?
What did you say, Jason?
I was going to say, that said, if you remember back when Lord of the Rings Online first went free to play, they announced that they had tripled their revenue in their first month, or first 2 months, whatever it was. So, and that was a decent free to play transition, not quite on the same level. So, maybe some of it, it's not all just probably the nickel and dime. They probably are actually getting a lot of new people. A lot of people are interested and who are spending and are happy to do so.
Oh yeah, I know a lot of people are just going to play the game for the storyline. The BioWare storyline is decently crafted in the MMORPG, and so a lot of people will play from 1 to 50 or whatever, 60, whatever the the max level is, and be happy to pay a couple dollars, as they level up and progress through that. But I guess it really falls under like how well will this, because they spent so much money on this game.
Oh yeah,
so much money on this game. Even though they have doubled their revenue or what have you, I would argue that they're probably still in the red in terms of operating costs and everything like that, and how much money they put into that. So I'm curious to know when this game actually will become profitable for them, in the sense that they've paid everything off and it's just gravy train at that point. Certainly they're on their way with the amount of restrictions they've imposed and that people actually have to pay to unlock. But overall, yeah, I don't even want to say good for them. I feel so like jaded. I'm like, oh, you got extra money. Whoop-de-doo. Good for you. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and wrap up the news for this week. Good little news topics. We're going to go ahead and move on to the weekly bombs. Before that, I just want to mention that there are several good first impression videos that you should check out on MMORPGS.com's YouTube page. We recently did one for Heroes Go, which is a surprising action-based dungeon crawler. Not as bad as I would expected it to be. And then, of course, we have our first look for Marvel Heroes if you want to see me punch things with Thor. So, other than that, of course, we're going to move on to the weekly bombs. I'm going to go ahead and go first with our weekly bombs. I'm going to give a weekly da bomb rather. It's been a little bit. So, to Planetside 2. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, but Planetside 2, I am really surprised. I've been enjoying the crap out of this game recently in the last couple weeks. It's sort of just become the the shooter rather, that I jump into just when I want to waste like an hour, because there's always something to do. There's always a different experience or a different fight, and I can always jump on a different class and have sort of like a different objective every time. And if I want to go stealthy and be infiltrator, snipe people, or just throw down C4 or what have you, I can do that, or I can be a supportive, or I can be a max and just blast people in the face. There's a lot of different things, and I feel like every time that I get a little bit tired of it, I can always just take a break, come back, and I really haven't missed anything. I don't feel like I have to always keep up my progression, because as long as you give me a gun and I can shoot people, and I don't feel like that person that's been playing more hours a week than me is getting a huge advantage, I'm pretty content with that. So definitely going to go ahead and say the bomb for Sony Online Entertainment and Planetside 2, all those updates. Keep it up. I'm really looking forward to what they add in the future. Now, Jason, what about you? What is your weekly bomb?
Well, I had something I was going to give, but I'm going to change it now, and I know Kevin will be happy to hear that. But I am going to talk about Neverwinter. I'm going to give my bomb to Neverwinter, but I'm going to give it to the gateway on Neverwinter. This is something that a lot of people don't always know about. It's gateway.playneverwinter.com. You can go there, and you can access all sorts of stuff on your character. It's sort of like their like the armory in World of Warcraft, or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things you can do, what I do during the day, and what I've actually been doing over the last hours we've been recording this, is I've been going on my crafting and just queuing new stuff, sending my miners out to gather some ore or make some armor and so on, just leveling up my crafting while I'm not even in the game. So that's a great thing to have. You can also look at your auctions. I believe you can send mail. Yeah, receive and send mail. So yeah, it's a great extra thing. It'd be really great if I was one of those, dorks who actually worked in an office or something like that, couldn't sit on my computer all day. I would probably be on this all day while I'm supposed to be working, and just every 20 minutes or so queuing up a new crafting task. So
I do actually like their crafting mechanic. It reminds me a lot of EVE Online in that it's time based, not so much resource based.
The only thing what I don't like about it is it's just very limited. There's only a few different crafting disciplines. I wish they would expand more on that.
Yeah, you only get to basically craft different armor and stuff, right? You can't craft weapons, I don't believe. There's no
there's no weapon. There's the leadership thing, which gets you a few random things every now and then, but no weapons, no potions, no food, nothing like that. It's just basically
or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and Kevin, what is going to go ahead and be your weekly bomb?
Well, I'm both excited and bummed because now I don't know which one to give, but I'm going to go ahead and do the one I really wanted to, and it's actually an A bomb for Perfect World, mainly for the fact that they just brought out this new game, Neverwinter, and for some reason, ever since it's hit open beta, they've had massive problems with their servers. Since the release, both the Star Trek Online servers and Neverwinter servers have been going down repeatedly. From what we gather, it seems that only one can be up at the same time, and I really feel they should have been more prepared for that. They have this giant game that's based off of very extremely successful franchise in D&D, and even the Neverwinter Nights games did pretty well, to the point where you should have expected there would be a decent turnout enough to be prepared server-wise. And the fact that they still haven't fixed this, a week in, and they're having issues with another game because of it, it just was really disappointing for me.
It's fair enough. It's fair criticism. They always can fall back on the, oh, we're still in open beta. It's still beta. They can still do that thing. But
which doesn't really explain the other game that's going down then because of it.
Yeah, Star Trek Online is having issues as well. It's kind of funny that they're somehow tied in that when one has an issue, the other one has an issue, or vice versa.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've got some nice little 2 bombs, 1 A-bomb, not bad. Let's go ahead and switch on over to the member bombs, see what they've been having to say. Now, to start with, we have Rock and Roll Gaming. I wonder if he's a fan of, like, Guitar Hero or something.
I was thinking maybe old school rock and roll racing, maybe.
Rock and roll racing? Perhaps. Yeah. Although it doesn't exactly flow off the tongue. Rock and roll gaming versus rock and roll racing. But he says, I would like to give a da-bomb to, see if I can say this right, Mabinogi. Yeah, Mabinogi, that's a tongue twister. For not having class restrictions, meaning I can be whatever mix of class I want to be. For example, if someone wants to be a healing, warrior, mage, and a cook in Mabinogi, you can. And having events going on like almost all the time, kept me coming back each time, and of course playing with friends. I would also like to give a da-bomb to MMOBomb. Why? Because of all the hard work that goes into everything they do. Well, I do appreciate that. We do try our hardest, and we hope that you will continuously stick around, because we've got a bunch of great stuff coming up now that, of course, we have Jason on board. A lot more articles, a lot more editorial articles, I should say. Not so much news posting should be going up, so we should have a lot of great content coming for you guys in the coming weeks and months. Now, Jason, it is customary that the new host and the co-host, rather, do sort of add their own, do the next member bomb, I guess you can say, read it off. So you've got this guy. Now, I will pronounce it for you because I had an issue with his name previously, and it's Zug Mashral.
Zug Mashral.
Yes.
Ach du Lieben. Zug Mashral.
Exactly.
All right. Zug Mashral says, honesty forces me at gunpoint to give a massive da-bomb to the Final Fantasy XIV beta. Yeah, it's not free to play, but the beta is. It blew me away. Square Enix has done awesome again.
No, I actually haven't been covering so much of the Final Fantasy XIV beta. I know our previous host, Magic Man, was a big fan of Final Fantasy, all the MMOs. Jason, do you know too much about what they've done in terms of the conversion to the MMO?
I've actually spoken on several occasions with Magic Man about Final Fantasy XIV, but yeah. I've watched some of the videos, and I honestly have just not been that impressed. It looks beautiful, and that's what Final Fantasy XIV was before. It was beautiful, but it just doesn't seem that. It still doesn't seem, I guess, westernized enough. I mean, one of the things we make fun of is like the global cooldown on skills, and the very static nature of combat. It's not actiony at all. You don't hardly have to move or anything. So it just looks like it's about 3 years old in terms of gameplay. It looks like it's about 3 years ahead of time in terms of graphics, but it looks like 3 or 4 years old in terms of gameplay. So it's just not something I'm personally looking forward to.
Do you think it would go free to play? Do you think Square Enix would ever do that?
They've gone so long. I mean, they had, obviously they released Final Fantasy XIV originally, and it wasn't free to play, and then they realized it was terrible, so they essentially made it free to play, or really buy to play, I guess. So they have the box, and then they put back the sub fee, and now they're going to launch it again, probably with the sub fee. It just seems like if they would have gone free to play with it, they would have done it already.
True.
And and look at an older game like Final Fantasy XI, that's still not even free to play. So I think it's unlikely.
I think Final Fantasy XIV, if it fails the second time, like it failed so massively the first time, then I think they may start considering that. I mean, we've had even World of Warcraft reported this week that it lost 1.2 million subs in the term of like 3 months or something like that, like something really short. And there's been discussion whether or not that would go free to play. I still don't think that would go free to play, but certainly pay to play MMORPGs are dying, and I would say that it's actually becoming a race now between developers whether or not they go free to play or buy to play, because certainly with the success of Guild Wars, although one would argue that the continuing success of Guild Wars is in question, but Guild Wars 2 had the buy to play model that was very popular. And so definitely, I would think that Final Fantasy XIV, if anything, if it failed again, would just be buy-to-play, perhaps with the option of going free-to-play in the future. I hope it goes free-to-play just because I work for a free-to-play website, and I hope everything goes free-to-play. But going on to the question from viewers, the couple weeks before when we actually had our question of the week, we had, with the recent outburst of MOBAs and FPS games, there's been tons of them, what genres do you feel need some more free-to-play love? What games or what genres haven't been smoothed enough by the free-to-play gods? And so we've got Bullseye. He threw me off with that capital I. Bullseye here, he said, if I had to point my finger at a genre of games that needs some free-to-play loving, it would be open-world action games. Yes, we have Tera and Raider Z in the fantasy RPG world, but both of those games focus on PvE. Only one exists in the action fight subgenre, Ace Online, Air Rivals, Action Flight. Yeah, and its devs are constantly trying to kill it. All the other action-type games I can think of are instance-based, like Vindictus C9, or Battle Arena, like World of Tanks. So many options exist, yet rarely do we see developers take the risk. I would have to agree with that. I can definitely see why people would not take the risk, because it is such a huge undertaking to make an open world, action-based game. Making it lobby-based is a lot easier in terms of technical difficulty, and also in terms of just making it, the content easier to create, I guess you could say. But we have Planetside 2, which is an open world, but it's not really action. It's just more of a shooter. And yeah, I would have to agree. We don't really see too many open world. We don't. I guess he says Tera, Raider Z. You could sort of argue Neverwinter, but again, that is PvE. Then you got games like War Thunder, Star Conflict. Again, they're still lobby based in the sense that it is an open area that you're participating in, but you do have to queue up and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know too many other sort of action open world MMORPGs like that. There does, I would have to agree, need to be more of those. Blech.
I'm really surprised that we haven't seen something, because you mentioned Planetside 2 as a great example, but then you could also talk about games that do have open world PvP, but in the MMORPG mold solidly, like Dark Age of Camelot go all the way back, or like the World versus World and Guild Wars 2 and whatever. I'm just surprised we've never seen an action fantasy open world kind of game, basically like Planetside 2, but with swords and bows and wizards and that sort of thing. Why have we never seen that kind of game? So I would play the hell out of it, like I played the hell out of Planetside 2.
I will have to say this isn't really something that is free to play, but the original creators of I'm trying to think. What did they make originally? I have to look it up now. There was a Kickstarter for an MMORPG that was completely PvP focused, that I believe was Dark Age of Camelot.
Oh, you're talking about Camelot Unchained?
Yeah, Camelot Unchained. That
Mark Jacobs game, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. From the original, he made Dark Age of Camelot, then he made Warhammer Online, which, I played Warhammer Online, but there was a lot of things wrong with that game. But he's going to make a PvP-focused MMORPG. It's just about PvP, and you can have your different classes and all that kind of stuff. And it'll be interesting. It's sort of along the lines it sounds like, in terms of what Bullseye wants actually out of an MMO or out of an open world action MMO. We'll see.
Is it
how
action
well,
though, or is it like tab targeting?
It sounded like it was going to be action based from what I heard. Like he didn't have any gameplay footage. I don't recall.
Sure.
But it sounded like it was action-based. I would assume it would be action-based because, that's sort of what the genre is moving towards today. And I would even be okay with, soft tab targeting, where it's, you relatively, kind of like Neverwinter, where you just kind of aim in the general direction of someone.
Sure. And
it kind of locks onto them a little bit like that. But you can still have the free mobility and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I would suggest that the biggest reason why we don't see something like this is just because we don't already see something like this. The whole point of what we see as MOBAs and FPSs is because they've been so hugely successful lately. Developers we know we can turn out a game that's similar to this, that looks like it's going to do well, let's try it there. And then with other games like Warhammer and some of these where they tried new things, they tried to start this slightly different idea that whether they did a bad job of it or not just didn't do well. And it's like, well, do we really want to go down a road and into this area where we just have no clue what will happen, or should we go to somewhere that's just more of the same?
And I think that's where Kickstarter has really sort of started to shine, because it's where those smaller developers who are willing to take those risks are starting to put projects out there that do fill those niche style of games or gameplay, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And the issue with Kickstarter, and it's not so much the Kickstarter, it's the people who are tempting them, is the level of game they bring to it when they say, hey, let's get the money for this. You have some that like, okay, this is an idea for a game. Can you help us do it? Or there's the others that like, this is how far along we are. We are like, this is this. We can show you this much of the game. What do you think? Will you fund it? And I think that makes or breaks a lot of the Kickstarters, because there's some of these, they're like, oh, we have this idea, give us $300,000 and we'll build it, versus someone who goes, you know, we've already got this much developed. Can you help us finish it?
Very true. All right, Kevin, why don't you go ahead and take the next question of the week answer?
Okay, it is by Air Splash. That'd be a nice splash of air. I feel the genre of games that needs more free-to-play love is RTSs. As of late, we haven't had many real-time strategy games. Most RTS games have a relatively good following, yet the number of them is constantly decreasing. I'm a huge fan of RTS games and wish that more would be created. My all-time favorite is Halo Wars, but there has never been a sequel yet. I'm looking forward to the new Command & Conquer game.
I would have to agree with this as well. I mean, we had End of Nations coming out, but now it's kind of been put on hold. Who knows how long? It's been put on hold for several months now. That was an action RTS. You have Command & Conquer coming out. What other sort of RTSs are out there that are free to play right now? Can't really think of too many of them.
Nothing out right now, but the one thing I'm looking forward to is I'm a big fan of the Total War series, and they are doing Total War Arena, which is supposed to be a free-to-play, Total War kind of multiplayer game.
They're billing it as slightly like a MOBA, although it is an RTS at heart, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So an RTS MOBA? That would be...
It could be an RTS MOBA. Yeah. Like, that could work.
Instead of just using champions, you use armies. Yeah.
Use armies, yeah. I actually think it'd be pretty cool if they can pull it off correctly, because that's thousands of units per both sides in an epic clash of multiple units. I have to actually say, scratch that. There are a couple of examples of something that's like a real-time strategy, but not. There is... I'm trying to think of it now. There is basically Total War, but set in a fantasy environment. I am trying to recall the name of it here.
Is that Dawn of Fantasy or something
it's
like that?
It's like, there's like Battleforge, which is slightly like that. There's also, but not even Battleforge is quite what I'm thinking of. I'm pulling it up right now. Literally this scrolling thing. World of Battles is what it's called. It's an MMORPGS where basically you can have a bunch of different units, groups of units, large, small, but it's more fantasy based than, of course, Total War is, but it retains the sort of gameplay feeling that you create your armies and you have bunches of different people sort of pitted against each other at one time. But that's a little bit of a different kind of RTS, I'd have to argue. It's more just focused on the actual battle portion of it. And I think a lot of people, when they think of RTS, they think of sort of like micromanaging individual squads or units themselves, like Warcraft 3 style, StarCraft style, etc. So yeah, I still am looking forward to the Total War MOBA/RTS, but I would still like to see more traditional RTS with new mechanics. I did play the Command & Conquer Alpha several months ago. Wasn't really impressed with it. I mean, granted, it is pretty and it's Command & Conquer, but it didn't really add anything new to the genre. But I can definitely see people who are really big fans of Command & Conquer, or just fans of RTS in general, playing that because it is a RTS and it is going to be free to play.
Yeah, I'd like to see a game, not Command & Conquer, that can be as good as it. I mean, the series has been successful because it knows what it's doing and it attempts to do it, albeit in sometimes slightly different ways each time or with a new story, but that they understand the idea of the game and they do a great job of it. I'd really like to see someone infuse new flavor to it.
Yes, I think End of Nations was trying that, although there were some balance issues, so I'm curious to know whether or not the game will ever come back. And if it does, we'll see how well that actually fares in the free-to-play market as a action MMORPGS, rather. And now, Jason, will you go ahead and take the last question of the week response here?
All right, from Sarah Fineable. We need more real-time strategy games like the first Command & Conquer Generals, which are focusing on multiplayer and single-player experience. Newer RTS seem to focus on multiplayer aspects like Generals 2, and some of them even remove whole base building aspect.
Now this is interesting. Of course, we're going back to the whole RTS, but that's something I kind of wanted to touch on is, what do you... I mean, I played a lot of Warhammer 40k, the RTS, both 1 and 2, and one of the things that I didn't like that they removed out of 2 was the base building aspect. Jason, do you play a lot of RTSs, and do you think that base building is like an integral part and is, in your opinion, like a really fun aspect of that genre?
Absolutely not.
Really?
You see, actually, that's part of why I'm into Total War as much as I am. I like the way they do that. It's just about the battles, about having your men there, your troops, and doing this stuff. I tried playing StarCraft. I mean, I played the original StarCraft back then. Just couldn't get into it that much. Only have kind of glanced at StarCraft 2, so...
Did you ever play Age of Empires?
No, I didn't. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a big base building fan. And actually, the one, while we were talking, I looked up that one I was talking about, Dawn of Fantasy Kingdom Wars.
Oh.
Is what it's called. I don't know if it's free to play, but I remember watching the videos, and it is almost like an RPG, I think, in that you'll form your castle, your city, or whatever it is, and you can send your troops out to do some PvE stuff, and they can also invade other countries and so on as well. So that's sort of, I guess, like having a base, having your own castle and whatever. So.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, like, in all honesty, my wife actually plays more RTS than I do. And she plays Age of Empires 3 like all the time and Warcraft 3. And she very much more enjoys the base building aspect to it because I think it sort of allows in her opinion, a better build up to the action. She can sort of strategize a little bit more, focus on just building up her armies and sort of building up her resources and like that. And I guess it does sort of add a different strategic element to it because yes, you can focus on the battles, but then there's sort of like the added element of focusing, taking a break from the battles for a second to focus on your economy, focus on building new structures and kind of researching tech and seeing your sort of base expand and grow and sort of mirror what you're doing with your armies as well. And I think that's sort of what the appeal to some people are in terms of, build the base building aspect to it. Kevin, are you much of a fan of RTSs?
I was about to jump in on this. Yeah, I'm still a StarCraft fan. Still play it when I find the time to actually sit down and really get a good match going. And I really feel the whole base building aspect is a massive part of it, especially in StarCraft. There's that extra layer of resource management and understanding when you really need to protect versus kind of stretch out and make a strike. There's so many kind of what we call backdooring, like if someone just leaves some area unprotected that you can just punish them for it. So you really allows you to learn how to manage the resources, whether they be units or buildings, very effectively. When you kind of lose that, I feel like, well, let's just make sure these guys go kill the guys who are good at killing, and less about let's make sure that our kingdom or whatever it may be is safe. I mean, it makes me feel, I guess, a little more realistic in that sense. Because I'm sorry, if you don't have a command, they're not going to tell the people where to go. They're just going to be dead. So.
So I think my issue might be almost same as like with League of Legends when I talk about that, not being that huge into that, because that's like League of Legends is to StarCraft in that you level up your experience as you go along and you build up, as opposed to say a typical battleground or whatever in an MMO, which I like doing PvP in MMOs quite a bit, but in those you don't so much level up and gain experience and get better as you play an individual match, and that's kind of more like how something without a base building mechanic works.
Yeah. I would say though, like in an MMORPG, it's a little different because every time you go back to a match, you've leveled up some more, or maybe
but you don't level during the match like you do in League of Legends, or you don't, as you said, build up your technology during a StarCraft match. So
yeah.
Yeah, and I can understand it, especially having the experience in like first-person shooter games. What you come in with is what you have. I mean, if anything, you're going to have less resources at the end of it than you did at the beginning, just from loss of ammo, if nothing else. So I can understand how that's definitely its own side. But that for me, the RTS thing, I feel like is because it's your large scale, like over time battle that you will have that time versus something like a shooter where it's more of localized to a smaller time frame, where there's less of the resource management.
All right, so we've got some great viewpoints here, but we're going to go ahead and ask this week's question of the week, which is, what is a game that you hated at release, but enjoyed after it received some patches, and why? So it's somewhat of a specific question. Basically, has there been any game that you've been a little bit like, meh, about, when it first came out, but given some patches, it really sort of evolved into a game that you ended up enjoying. Jason, Kevin, do you have any examples of these? If you don't, it's fine. It's sort of a very specific question, but I'm curious if you do.
No, mainly because if there was a game that I hated at release, I just didn't play it.
That is, some people just do that.
No, I would say actually Star Trek Online was kind of like that for me because I'm a big Star Trek geek, much more than I am, say, a Star Wars geek. So I was really looking forward to it coming out, and it really disappointed me when it did. And then after it went free-to-play, I was like, let me just check back into it. And for whatever reason, it had been like 2 years later, and I really liked a lot of the changes they'd made. And I got back into it played it pretty decently for a few months. I'm always meaning to get back into it, whatever, but it's definitely something on my to-do list, whereas shortly after it came out, I think I actually uninstalled it and was just like, yeah, whatever.
I would say for me, in terms of a game that I hated upon release, I wouldn't say so much hated as I just didn't find it enjoyable. Would have to be, I'm trying to think right now. I had it in front of me and then I lost it. But I would probably have to say like War Thunder. When I first started playing War Thunder, it was like all right. I wasn't really enjoying it, but I wasn't really hating it. It was kind of like average back in the early beta. But coming back to the game later on after they've made several patches and sort of added a bunch of different stuff to it, towards the end of the beta, I'm not really much of a person who likes to play fly MMOs or, fighting in the air, basically. I do enjoy the idea of it, but execution has always been a missed opportunity with me. And I'd have to say War Thunder is a game that after they've done several patches to it and sort of tweaked everything, I was actually enjoying that game quite a bit. Haven't played it recently, though, especially after the recent economy change that they did that I've been hearing so many issues with. Yeah, that was a game for me that I feel like really improved over time during its beta course. So we're really curious to know what you guys think. Go ahead and leave your responses down below in the comments. As always, you can always send me your question of the week answers, or just, send me a line to say hello at michael@mmobomb.com. This is a point in the show, Jason and Kevin, where you guys can plug your individual Twitters, your YouTube, your MySpace, your Facebook, whatever else you want to actually plug. And,
MySpace.
Yeah, I know, MySpace.
Does that exist anymore?
I think it does if you're like a musician. You're someone who plays music.
Wasn't there something else that came out with MySpace? I'm trying to remember the name of it now. One of those other sites that wasn't Facebook.
I was on LiveJournal for a while.
Oh man, what was the one? Zenga? Remember
there we go, Zenga. Man.
Zenga is that's how you know you're old.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did we date ourselves with that one?
A little bit. Zenga's been out. I remember when people started first posting stuff on that. And I was like, what? You just like talk about your day on this website? Yeah. Like, what is?
I remember when Facebook was just for college students. So woo.
Yeah, that's that too. I know you're trying to hit a personal goal, Jason, with your Twitter.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and plug that?
Very close to 1,000 followers. I'd love to get there shortly after this is posted on the site. My Twitter is @WinterInformal. And, of course, I write on the site, and you can find other crap I write on my blog at jasonwinter.wordpress.com.
All right. So we got @WinterInformal, correct?
Yes.
All right. That's his Twitter. And then he's got his blog as well. Go ahead and check Jason out. I'm sure he'll blog about drinking tea or coffee in the morning and then whatever else have you. Some random bits of MMO news sprinkled about his day with sitting in front of the television or typing at his computer. And then Kevin, do you have anything? Do you want to just give out your phone number and say call me, text me? Oh, I don't even think your phone's working right now.
No, it is. Thanks for reminding me. I still need to make sure I call them and get them fixed. Get that fixed. Well, yeah, it's great to call someone without a phone though. Now that I actually think about it. No, as much as I'd love for millions of people to call me and how much fun that would be, I'm gonna let this one slide this time. All
right. Kevin has no social media. He's a little bit of a socially inept in that area, but it's all right. You got plenty of real life friends, so it makes up for it. I think for every 1,000 online friends you have, if you have like one real life friend, you're doing better.
I'm at like 4 million. Cool.
I know, right? All right. So that's gonna be our weekly free to play cast episode 68. I've been your host, Spunkify. I don't know why I've been talking in short statements right there. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to leave down your comments, questions, and concerns in the comments down below. try to socialize a bit with you guys, smooth it up with the fans, what have you. But I've been Spunkify. For Jason, for Kevin, for myself and MMOBomb, we thank you, and we'll see you guys next time. Spunkify out. Later, guys.